What makes it interesting is if you're a public trader, right? That's talking about how bullish you are on something. Why would you obfuscate the relationship between you and the chain itself? Why would you be like, oh, I don't want to reveal that my identity as a trade on Twitter should be attached to this on-chain identity? When someone is like, no, I don't want that. And we're not talking about like doxing their home address or anything that can put them in harm. We're just talking about aligning their statements on how bullish they are with their holdings on chain.
All right, here we are in Crypto with Cami, where we discuss the week's major headlines and biggest themes. This week, there was something really interesting that happened with one of Crypto Twitter's recent main characters. He goes as Stop Murad or Must Stop Murad on X. And he's a meme coin trader. He gives outrageous price predictions for not very liquid meme coins. So yeah, he's become very, very prominent. And ZachXBT, the famous blockchain analyst, crypto sleuth, disclosed 11 of wallet addresses that he believes are Murad's. And so there was a very interesting debate that emerged from this because some people were very upset that ZachXBT had done this because it compromised this trader's privacy, while others argued, well, he's already trading in a transparent blockchain. He's giving financial advice, so people should be able to track, his buying and selling of these tokens. And then Seb here from Sapper had really interesting takes on this. I also think Zach might have used Sapper to find this out. So yeah, maybe if you can weigh in, just give us a bit of background on how this went down and what your take on all this is.
Yeah, definitely. So first, thank you for having me. And like a little refresher on Zapper. So our goal is to make blockchains fully readable to everyone, right? They're public, they're transparent, and our goal is to translate that into a language that anyone can understand, read, access to make better informed decisions. On this situation particularly, I think it really brings a very interesting debate on the relationship between privacy and transparency. I actually think they're exclusive. They don't necessarily have any impact whatsoever on each other. In the sense of you can have a fully public blockchain, but have anons, transact on it. And when we're talking about privacy, we're usually talking about protecting or not revealing something about your identity, right? So in this case, Murad, this influencer, tying it to a on-chain account. What I think is important though is, and what makes this post, I think from Zach, kind of like a change, I think this kind of marks a transition in the industry, is that the playing field has not been leveled in terms of like on-chain information since forever, right? You have people that have very good tools that understand how to explore the chain, get unique insights, and you have typical new people coming in that are at a complete disadvantage, right? And so you have this huge information advantage, akin to the information asymmetry advantage you'd have in traditional finance. Where I'd say it's like different is in this case, it's more of a technical knowledge, expertise advantage, whereas traditional finance in the traditional market, it's really just about a game of who knows what in the markets. So I think in this case, there are people that, I'm speculating, but probably might have known, right, who Murad was on chain. Maybe would not have revealed it because they don't have any incentive to reveal it, right? Because they can maybe track their moves or know when Murad's saying something different from what he's actually doing. And that could give you an advantage. But by leveling the playing field and making that information public, and creates a much fairer market, right? Everyone now has the same information and can act on it in the same way. And that's where I think like transparency is critical to have fair and free markets, because every participant has the same, there's nobody that has a unique advantage, right, or edge on the market to take any type of decision.
I'll try to be a devil's advocate here just to, advance the discussion. Okay, but in this case, ZachXBT has a huge following, and at the same time, he was revealing information of someone who, didn't explicitly agree to that, to have his addresses publicized. So while it may be true that some people might have already access his wallet, it's different to have them be just publicized for a very broad audience without his consent. Do you think maybe there's a line there, especially when he hasn't been doing anything wrong? Because I think it's pretty clear when ZachXBT publicizes wallets of someone who is scamming or exploiting smart contracts and so on. But in this case, he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't agree to have his information out there. Do you think maybe there's a line that was crossed, or to you, like, if the information is out there, it should always be public and it's all fair game?
Yeah, so I think there's some nuance in there. I could definitely see, ZachXBT traditionally will post about, scammers and hackers. And so someone could see the post and immediately think, oh, Murad is a scammer or whatever. Or in fact, like, nothing shows that he did anything wrong. And so I think there's part of that where I think there's like a critique where ZachXBT's traditional kind of posts typically point to people being scammers. And so I think perhaps that unfairly put Murad in that camp. But let's say ZachXBT is just this person that shares public information. I think it changes, right? Is it the fact more so that people thought that, Murad could potentially be scamming or do something bad? Or is it more so like the fact that it was public? I think in terms of the public, it really depends on how public the information is, right? Was it, for example, like my ENS is my first and last name, right? And so I decided to really kind of dox myself, dox my address, like many people do. And I think that's where I think the question is, like, where in there does someone, when you put something on a public blockchain, is there some level of consent where you're like, oh, I'm tying this to me personally, right? Is it the very clear case of putting first, last name as your ENS? Or is it somewhere in the middle? And there's also like another debate on like social networks identity and then on-chain identity, and where there's like issues in mapping those together. But for me, like, the simple rule is like, if it's a public blockchain and some people can have a unique advantage because of some better expertise, it does not contribute to having fair and free markets. And if it's public and we're using obfuscation or the fact that it's not truly public because it's just, you have to understand, then I don't think that in like any way kind of contributes to, as I said, to like these, to fair markets.
Yeah, I think the key here is that some people likely already knew this information while some didn't, and that creates information asymmetry. So if that's already happening, then the most fair outcome is for just everyone to have the same information.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, one conclusion from this is, if people trading on chain want privacy, then there should be tools specifically for this, so that there isn't this information asymmetry, and while allowing people to transact without revealing their identity, and just having all of their financial holdings and movements out there for everyone to see. Maybe there's this shows there's this need for some like more privacy tooling in public blockchains like Ethereum and Solana.
Yeah, I think what makes it interesting is if you're a public trader, right, that's talking about how bullish you are on something, why would you obfuscate the relationship between you and the chain itself? Why would you be like, oh, I don't want to reveal that my identity as a trader on Twitter should be attached to this on-chain identity? I think when someone is like, no, I don't want that, and we're not talking about like doxing their home address or anything that can put them in harm. We're just talking about aligning their statements on how bullish they are with their holdings on chain. And, and this perhaps is like an assumption there, but like, I'd assume if you're you have good intentions and you're really trying to educate and share why you're bullish, there's no reason that where you wouldn't want to like attach these together. In fact, it probably increase trust with your audience and show skin in the game, and perhaps even add more weight to whatever you're saying. I think too, I think we're like in a really weird, awkward place where we have traditional social media and identity built in, and then we have on-chain, and then a different sort of identity. And then we're trying to like reconcile these two pieces, but these two things, right? And a lot of things that Zach has been exposing is that these two things often don't say the same thing, right? Where on-chain, there's a scam. Clearly, this person that was pumping this new meme coin was selling on-chain, right? And so there's this misalignment. And so, part of my thought is it actually like the setup of social media right now that contributes to this issue in a way? Like if social media was directly plugged on chain, right? It's not your Twitter profile that's saying something. It's your actual like ENS account, right? Or on-chain identity. That's your voice. It's not this other thing that you've been building. And I think, could that contribute to like, better reputation, better way to assess someone's true intents, right? Probably. Yeah. So I think there's an area there where there's this kind of misalignment in kind of the voice and character between kind of these two, between different platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've all been waiting for true Web3 based social media, like true SocialFi. Nothing has really taken off yet, but I mean, this is one of many reasons why something like that is so needed. But I still think that it does require consent from the person in question. So I think, yes, like obviously if somebody is an influencer and they're pumping some, meme coins on Twitter or on social media, then they have no reason to hide their on-chain activity. And I agree, like it would improve their reputation if they disclose that publicly. But I think it should still be their choice. So maybe, like if you have an influencer who is disclosing all of their wallets and has no issue with being tracked, then you would obviously trust that influencer more. But then, someone might want to use like some, like privacy tools or transact in more privacy focused chains, or like use mixers or something. But I think those tools should be available. Like I think it's important for people to have that choice.
Yeah. And I think like to your point, like I think that particular issue is solved by tech, right? Rather than like obfuscation or people having varying degrees of like knowledge on how to like read the
absolutely.
chain.
And hopefully, ideally it would be solved by tech, and in a way that also allows, like, really allows people to get the whole picture, because it's so easy to create wallets that are that those traders can then hide, right? Because even if somebody comes out and says like, these are my wallets, they can be doing the exact opposite thing with other wallets. So is that problem even solvable? Like, I don't see how you could stop somebody from doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. I think it stems a lot from like how you assess reputation in a way where, let's say, for example, like the NFT bull run of 2021. I think even DeFi too. Like, I think one thing that interesting that happened is you had people that started having big Twitter followings because of their on-chain identity, right? If I think of like Pranksy or Dingaling in the NFT space, and some others, like literally built on their big kind of NFT collections, and their on-chain identity contributed. It was like the root of what contributed their Twitter profile. It's the reason why they had so many followers. And what they did on chain added weight to it. And so, what I think is interesting with like the state of like a lot of like meme coin influencers is it's flipped in a way, right? You have people that will be very bullish publicly on Twitter, but it's kind of the other way around. And so, I totally see your point in terms of like, you could have a trader, right? If they reveal their wallets, they could be hiding one and doing something with it. There's risks. Someone could always figure out the trace, but I do think an area though is if we think about what you do on chain as a weight to your reputation, I think that's where it becomes interesting, right? If a major NFT influencer starts doing some other stuff with another address, right, that does not contribute to their identity or reputation. And so if you're a good actor, I'd assume you tend to focus on like your own identity. But you do bring a good point of like, okay, I'm a trader. These are my addresses, but I'm going to have the other one here that kind of where I hedge and I do other kind of shady stuff potentially. That could be hidden away. But I'd argue that perhaps it would be much harder to build a kind of true on-chain reputation by doing so.
I think the way to avoid that is to have a stronger on-chain reputation system where on-chain reputation can actually be useful and apply to composable in different DeFi dApps. So if you can reduce the collateral you need to take out a loan on Aave or another lending protocol, and I don't know, do other things on chain, then your incentives are to build a strong on-chain reputation. And so you'll want all of your wallets tied to that and all of your activity tied to that, because it'll allow you to get, potentially just better terms, better financial terms, because you have like everything tied to there. And so you wouldn't want to be spending transactions and assets and volume and money in other wallets, because they're not contributing to that reputation that, again, it's what you use to get better terms in DeFi dApps. But I think I think that's inevitable. Like, it just seems like it'll be something that's just so key for DeFi to work. But again, like, with Same thing with SocialFi, just like it really hasn't happened yet, but I think that's basically the solution to what we're discussing, right? Just like a strong on-chain reputation system.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're still, I think there's like two areas. There's like an explicit reputation system that's like really on-chain. And the other one is more implicit in the way of like, if blockchains are super readable and you can see someone's account very easily, understand their activity patterns, what type of app they use, what their holdings are, that is in a way to have like a reputation system. Not everyone will judge someone's reputation the same way, right? But you're still able to assess someone ish, like, oh, this is what they tend to do on DeFi. They're like a hardcore like DeFi user. They seem to be a good trader. They seem to be like a long-term investor, etc. Like the more tools to make chains readable, the more it will be easy to build this like layer of reputation. What I do think is interesting is like we're in kind of like the pre-readable era of blockchains. And so we're like in the awkward phase. We're in like a phase where there's ton of new people coming into the space. And you go through different apps like Uniswap, Zapper, OpenSea. You make a transaction, and then where that transaction actually happened, it's kind of like this black box. Is it clear to you that blockchains are fully transparent when you set up your first and last name ENS? Not exactly, right? So there's a lot of decisions you might take where you don't realize what like blockchains actually are and some of their like fundamental qualities, such as like transparency. And so making blockchains more readable hopefully kind of helps people make better decisions on their privacy, on what they decide to put there. It's also a way for you know, something that still happens a lot is you'll have people doing very kind of public, well, not public, but like they'll be scamming people, and it's very obvious on chain, right? If someone just looks, they'll see the pattern. But because not a lot of people are just looking, right, at the right place, it's kind of just hiding in plain sight. And so putting those things in front of people, right? If you're walking down, like the analogy would be like blockchains are like downtowns. Right now, people are walking downtown and there's pickpockets everywhere, you know, stealing money in broad daylight, right? And nobody's paying attention, nobody's looking at it. And then it would be like at home that people would then realize, oh, where's my money, right? And so currently that analogy applies to this space where you have blockchains, where you have people doing those things in broad daylight, but nobody's looking there, right? We'll be looking at Twitter, Discord, and then you'll have people like ZachXBT and others that are actually looking what's happening on chain. And so I think what's important is actually, let's bring downtown in your face, right? You should be able to see, you know, you should be much closer to the information. That information should be much easier to understand, just as you'd be walking in a downtown area. And I think that's where I think we need to be headed in terms of like making blockchains readable for everyone. And why we're kind of like in this very awkward stage, because people don't even realize they're walking in a downtown, right? They'll be transacting on OpenSea or Uniswap, not realizing they're sending that on a public ledger. And so it can create like habits or patterns and decisions that don't really align with how you'd walk, right? In this digital town square.
I think that's a great way to look at it. I think we're so early in blockchains that people don't really understand what they're getting into, basically. So yeah, they might be just walking around naked, or
yes.
doing stuff that they wouldn't normally share with the world.
Yes.
But yeah, it's so I think this one kind of incident has been really interesting because it's just highlighted this dichotomy of like the need for privacy, but also this really powerful feature of blockchains that allow for transparency in financial systems that just like hasn't been the case ever before. And it's something that we're not used to, and we're just like understanding how it can play to our advantage. So I think it's important to first, like, for people to realize that this is the case, that you're transacting in a public ledger, and second, like you said, to make it readable. So we're and I love that concept too. Like, we're in like the pre-readable blockchain phase. We need to make blockchains more readable. There's so much information out there. Like, now everyday people should be able to access it, because I think you make a great point. Otherwise, there's a lot of information asymmetry, and that's exactly what blockchains are trying to or are meant to fix, to have a more level playing field. So yeah, I think making blockchains more readable, taking advantage of that transparency, giving people choice on whether, and tools for whether they want to transact privately, and improving an on-chain reputation system. Yep. So yeah, I think great takeaways from this chat. Seb, thank you so much for joining me.
Of course, this was super fun. Thank you.